Today we're going to do a 1-year review of our Geolandar XAT tire in a 37-12.5 R17 load range D, rated to carry 3,525 pounds, and see how they have held up. Now, we put these tires on our 2020 F250 when it was brand new 1 year ago exactly, and we currently have 13,000 miles on the truck and the tires. So let's take a look and see how they've held up overall in various different conditions, how the tread wear is, and most importantly, would I buy these tires again? So first of all, let's get started and talk about them on road. So these tires, one of my favorite things about them is how good they are on road. One of the things with especially an aggressive tire is that a lot of times they'll have a tendency to wander or to drift, where you're always having to hold the steering wheel and they want to, pull towards, left side, right side. And it has a lot to do with how the tread pattern is. Something that was an issue with the Toyo MT tires. I've run lots of sets of those tires and they always pulled. And it's just how the tread was designed on them. So how they handle is fantastic. They're very predictable. They've been really good on road. Now, as far as road noise, these tires are noisier than a KO2 tire, if you're familiar with those, but they're quieter than a Goodyear Duratrac tire. Now, I've run several sets of the Goodyear Duratrac and the KO2, probably 5 sets of those. And these are right in the middle. They're very acceptable noise level. You'll hear them, but they're not intrusive or obnoxious. A lot quieter than any MT tire, whether you're talking the Toyo, the BFG, the Destination MT from Firestone, or most any other MT style tread. It's going to be significantly quieter and easier to live with when you're driving and commuting with it. Now, these tires came from the factory with 1930 seconds of tread depth, and after 13,000 miles, of course, they've lost some tread. So on the edge of the tires with a depth finder, we find that it's right at 1630 seconds, and it's the same inside and outside of the tread. We've rotated the tires every 5,000 miles, and we found that the tread depth is super consistent, front to back, side to side. 1630 seconds on the outside. However, on the center, it is shallower. We're right about 1230 seconds, and this is the same on all the tires. So what we're seeing is that the tires have somewhat of a crowning effect, which is typical if you have the pressure too high in a tire. Now, we've been running these at 40 psi in the front and 45 to 50 psi in the rear, depending on how much load we're carrying. These tires are rated for max psi of 50, so we wanted to obviously not exceed that, but when we're carrying a high load that's closer to the max limit of the tire, we want to run that higher pressure. So with that in mind, I don't know that we want to run the pressure too much lower on road. We've been kind of playing with dropping the pressure just a little bit more, just to see if it will flatten out the tread wear side to side, a little bit less in the center. But I don't know. That's probably the biggest complaint I have with these tires right now, is that they are wearing the center more than the outside edge. Now, it will vary depending on your truck and the weight of your truck. This truck we never use as a commuter truck. It is only used on trips and hauling. So literally it is loaded all the time and it has a ton of weight on it. So it either has the camper on it, which you've seen in other videos, or it has the camper and the trailer, or some combination of the two. And with that, it's gonna wear the tires a little bit more heavily. So the tread wear, I would say, is fairly acceptable. If it continues at the same rate that it is right now, we'll probably see 30 to 35,000 miles from these tires. Now, the tread wear is never consistent on tires. So the tread wear rate, I should say. So essentially, these tires could last a lot longer than that, because often as the tires wear, they get a bit harder in rubber compound, and it in essence slows down the wear process, but also decreases the traction. So we'll see how long we end up running these for, but right now I would say they're very good on road. No complaints at all whatsoever. If you're looking at them for a commuter type truck, I would definitely say they're worthwhile to take a look at. Super comparable to a Ko2 BFG tire, and probably a bit easier to live with than the Goodyear Duratrac tire, if you're familiar with those. Now, one of the biggest complaints otherwise I have with these tires is that they are not 3-peak snowflake rated, unlike the Ko2 and the Duratrac tire, which are 3-peak snowflake rated. And what I noticed with these so far in snow is that in deep snow, they're fantastic. They're better than the Ko2, very, very comparable to a Duratrac in deep snow, in deep powder. They do a fantastic job of pulling forward and not digging down. That's a huge thing with tires. Certain tire tread has a tendency to dig down versus pull forward, especially in sand and deep snow. That was one of the complaints I had with the Toyo MT tire, is that would have a tendency to dig down more than pull forward. And I ran 3 or 4 sets of those, and so I was pretty familiar with those tires. Now these, fantastic in deep snow. Not so great in compact snow and icier type conditions. Now, none of these tires in all-terrain segment are going to be ideal in ice and compact snow. However, I would say the Ko2 and the Duratrac significantly, noticeably better than these tires. So if you're spending a lot of time in the snow, on road especially, these aren't going to be the best choice. However, they're not bad. They're pretty predictable. They're just not as grippy and confidence inspiring. So snow, mixed feelings on that. Off-road, they're fantastic in the deep snow. Now, as far as on gravel, now we drove this thing through Death Valley, put on 400 or 500 miles in Death Valley on corrugated rough roads and lots of other gravel off-road type situations. And typically what you see with tires in those type of conditions is they start chunking and they start rounding the lead edge of the tires. These have held up pretty darn well. There's just a very slight amount of wear and rounding on them, but it's very, very acceptable. There's a few small chunks that have been taken out on some of the rocks that we've driven it on, kind of more rock crawling type situations, but they've done really, really well. That was another complaint I had with the Toyo MT tire, is that they would chunk crazy easily and you end up with all these distorted tread blocks after a few off-road trips. So these very acceptable. I would say on par with the Ko2 tire in that regard. Definitely no complaints there. Now, as far as the looks appearance of the tire, I think that's totally subjective to everyone's opinion. I think they're a fine tire. I don't really care as much about looks compared to performance. Now, as far as rolling resistance and just highway MPG and whatnot, I would say these are okay. They're not as good as like a Ko2 tire for rolling resistance, but they're better than a lot of other tires that you would think would be better. You know, I ran a set of the Cooper ST Max tires, which are also a hybrid style tire, and those were terrible. Probably one of the worst tires I've ever run in for just rolling resistance on road. They're just, I guess if you didn't have a lot of other experience with different tires, you probably would think, you know, maybe they're fine, but I thought they were pretty dismal in really every regard. These are definitely a good tire in comparison to those. A good quality tire. So as far as that goes, they've been pretty good on the rocks and off-road. In the mud, they've been actually really pretty good as well. We've run it unfortunately in some really nasty muddy situations, and you know, for what they are, they're pretty good. Realistically, I think there are no tires, including mud tires, that are really any good in mud. You know, if you want a good mud tire, get a tractor tire. I mean, that's where it's at in high power, so you can actually clear the tread blocks. None of these tires are going to clear tread blocks. It's just, that's how it is. So, you know, I know everybody claims MT tires are way better. I don't think so. So they're not bad, you know, for mud, snow, gravel, on road. I would say they're pretty good. And, you know, overall, I think they're a good all-around tire. They're an actual 3-ply sidewall tire, and the sidewalls have held up really well. We did have one puncture flat when a bolt on road punctured straight through one of the center of the tread blocks. So there's no tire that would have kept that from happening, because it literally was through the meatiest part of the center of the tread block, and put a tire plug in it, and it's been fine. We haven't had any issues with it since then. So, you know, for the tires, I think they're pretty decent tire. Definitely I would cross shop them to a KO2, a Duratrac, and I would put them right in, man, they'd be really close to a KO2. So why didn't I run a KO2 on this truck? The KO2 37-12-5 tire, for whatever reason, it wears really, really poorly, especially in heavier applications. And I've run 2 sets of them now on my off-road rig, and they wear crazy fast. I think, you know, 20,000 miles is about what you can get out of them. And so that was a huge letdown. So that was the reason to try these tires, just for the tread wear. And so far, they're definitely better, partly because they come with a lot more tread from the factory than a KO2 tire does. So really great tire overall. I think it's definitely worth consideration. There are some other tires that are coming out on the market though that definitely have, you know, some interest and intrigue for me. I think one of the tires that is most interesting is the Maxxis Razor AT tire, which is a 3-peak snowflake tire. That's a bit less aggressive than these, but maybe a little bit more aggressive than a KO2. And I just love the 3-peak snowflake tires just for that extra winter traction. So that's a really tempting tire to choose. So it would be hard for me to buy these again when there's other tires to try out. But would I buy them again? I would. I don't have anything that I really dislike about them, but they're also not, they haven't wowed me to a point where I would just keep buying them, such as the KO2 tires, which I've run at least 5 sets of the KO2 tires because they are fantastic. And with just the tire limiting factors of what's available for a 17-inch wheel in a 37 diameter that can carry the load that we're carrying, you know, that's really limited out the choices for us a bit. Some of the other ones that are really interesting that have come out recently is the Toyo AT3 tire, which is also a snowflake rated tire. I would definitely cross shop that if you have a sizing of one that would fit your rig. I think that one looks to be a pretty intriguing tire. And there's also a new Mickey Thompson AT tire that just recently was released that is also snowflake rated, if I recall correctly. So some great tires. It's amazing time just to have such great options with tires today to select from. And I love tires. We'll see if we actually run these out all the way or if we end up replacing them early, just because I would like to try another tire. But I think we'll probably get, you know, up into the 30,000 mile range if we keep running them. So we'll keep you posted. Maybe we'll do a year 2 review if we keep them around that long. If you have any questions about these tires or any of the other tires in comparison, feel free to mention it in the comments. If you have any thoughts on the tire kind of doing the wearing in the center a little bit heavier, any other suggestions, feel free to mention that. And otherwise, if you have any other topics that you have interest in, you know, feel free to ask. You know, I'd be glad to take a look at those for you guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next video. Thanks so much.